Hi, welcome. We're just going to have a run through some Photoshop techniques, just looking at applying some lighting and rendering to this quick sketch scene. First off, the scene has been, I think it's just a quick sketch, very basic sketch. As you can see, it's a photograph of a sketch. That's you can see the carpet there on the left-hand side. Uh, yes, so it's not particularly great quality. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to crop the image and we're going to adjust it slightly. So let's start with the crop tool. So the crop tool is this tool here. Crop tool. It's this tool. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Keyboard shortcut for the crop tool is C, and to zoom, I'm using the Alt key on the keyboard and the middle mouse button. So holding down Alt, middle mouse button is to zoom. C is your crop tool. We've also got this little extra here within the crop tool, which is the rotate as well. So we can that does a rotate thing. So it enables us to rotate our screen, and also we've got these handles here to crop. So just using a combination of those, just going to roughly crop in. I'm not too fussed about this. I kind of like the sketchy nature of the drawing, so I'm just see, I would like to preserve some of that. There we go. Just cropping in all the excess at the sides that we don't need. So once you've finished selecting the area you wish to crop, press enter, and it'll crop that. I normally just kind of click off the crop, select the select tool, came with the crop box, hit the crop, and now we're left with our selection. Now what I'd like to do now is we're going to preserve this layer here, so I'm going to preserve this image. So when working with drawings, I always like to keep a copy of it just for future reference, just in case we forget something or delete something. We can always go back to this and have this as a future reference. So if you look on the right hand side, we've got the new layer button here that creates a new layer, and what we can do is we can drag this onto that new layer and it creates a copy there. So we've got a background and this one's locked. So here I'm just going to double click at the beginning of the word. Oh, it's not letting me type it. I'll do it there. I think it's because this one's locked. To unlock this, we can double click, hit OK, and then we can change the title there. So I'm going to call this original. There we go. That's our original. And we have background copy. So this is just, we're going to call this background. Okay, and for the time being I'm going to turn off the original layer with the little eye icon there. You really know that it's been turned off when we turn off the one above it. So whatever is displayed on the top here will show as it's in front of the viewer. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is to select our background layer, and we're going to change the brightness and contrast of the image. So let's go to image, adjustments, and to levels. There's lots of different ways of doing this. You can use a different tool if you wish. I like to have a look at the levels, and this shows us a kind of a histogram of the values in the image. So there's different ways of doing this. You can grab a slider and pull the sliders across. It's one way, or you can alter the middle values or the lower values. Now that's one way of editing this. Another way is using these dropper functions here. So you pick an area where you want the the image to be white, so you go for the white dropper, and we pick a place where you want it to be white. Then we go to the black dropper. Where's that gone? I was just trying to zoom in, but it's not. It's me. Okay, so can I pick that as a black line there? That's not so bad. Maybe again I'll have a look up here. That's okay. Or we can try shifting this across a bit. Just trying to highlight, bring these to the foreground. Okay. So getting rid of a few more of those, pulling this up. That's pretty clean, that I quite like that. Okay. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so background's done, original is still in place. I'm going to start by adding some volumes to these sides. So to do this, we're going to start a new layer. You notice the layer's on top of the background at the moment, so we can change that around later. And we're going to use the Polygon Lasso tool. So you'll notice on each of these tools down here, there's a tiny arrow in the bottom right hand corner. You can click and drag on that. That's your poly. We'll bring out a submenu. We're going to go for Poly Lasso tool. Now, I'm just going to roughly select these areas. Okay. Now, with this technique, it does work well if you're kind of quick in your selection. Yes, it's kind of going for a kind of a collagey look. So, okay, so first off, we're gonna render this with a gradient tool. So the gradient tool is hidden behind the paint bucket. So we can click and drag on the paint buckets, go to gradient tool, and we see we have a gradient here. And this gradient goes from the foreground color to the background color. Now, so first thing, select the tool. I'm going to select two colors. So I'm going to select a light blue there. And if you keep the cursor in the same position, press X on the keyboard, and you'll notice that X switches around your foreground and background color. So you press that again, and that gives me the same on both of them. Now I'm going to do a little cheeky thing now and just change the RGB here to HSB. I think is it hue, saturation, and black? Does that make sense? So what I'm going to do is just drop the saturation down. So this one is less saturated than this here, and that's because things that are further in the distance are less saturated than things in the foreground. Sorry, things in the distance are more saturated than things in the foreground. Okay, so I can then click and drag. I'll see that it's slightly more saturated in the background, and the foreground here is nice and bright. So possibly do it to about here. There we go, that's a bit brighter. Okay, now that's all in good. I'm going to use the same technique for doing the side wall here. So again, new layer, poly tool, I'm going to chop this out. I like to chop the corners off just to make it a bit more sketchy. We're going to pop this black line in front of this chop out later. I'm going to switch the layers around as well. So, okay, because this wall is further back than this wall, I'm going to change the saturation and make it a little bit more saturated, so it should, the wall on the left should jump forward a little bit of the one on the right. So that, I can now go into the gradient, have a look, make sure that you choose the correct angle. So if it's the wrong angle, it won't look like the wall is curved around. So just have a go with playing around with different angles and see what looks looks like it's the best. That doesn't look so bad. Okay, I'm happy with that. I can press Control D on the keyboard and that'll deselect my selection set. Over on the right hand side now we can grab the layer and switch them around. So it drops this one behind. And okay, so next off we've got floor and ceiling to do. So using the same technique, let's do those. So just the floor. Ideally you should really name these, so they should be named floor. I'm going to pick a colour. So maybe a black. So pressing X and the keyboard switching around black to black. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Make sure you select the layer. Maybe add a little bit of colour to that. Okay, and now for the ceiling. Make the ceiling maybe an off-white. Chop around these light wells, and then we'll pop some light through them. Gradient tool. Okay. Good. Okay, so yes, I've done that on the same layer. That's a mistake, so I have to chop that out. Delete it there. Create a new layer. There we go. So ceiling. Yeah. Left wall. Right. Wall. Okay. Now, Control D to deselect. I'm going to drag this background layer, pull it up to the top, and then we're going to use one of our blending tools. And what that's going to do is going to take away the white and let us see these other layers through this sheet. So we're going to go to the multiply tool. I'm just going to chop that out. It looks quite effective. You can go through these just by pressing your down arrow on the keyboard, and there's lots of different types. Some are more effective than others. You may find one that just fits the bill. This looks kind of interesting, divided. It flips the colours around. But yeah, for now, stick with multiply. So the background layer is now on top. The altered background layer is on top. We've got ceiling, walls on the floor at the bottom. Place the floor there. If you put the floor above, you'll see it's slightly different than underneath the wall. So it's depending on how you want it to look. And we've got the original on the bottom. Right. Next off is we're going to add lights coming in through the ceiling. So I've got an extra layer. I'm going to call this lights box. And this is going to be for the lights on the floor. Now, what we're going to do with this, we're going to use a transparent gradient of white, and that's just going to place a mark. I'm going to draw with a marquee tool on the floor, something that kind of reflects what the light would look like if it was to come through the ceiling. So take note of the angles here and draw an appropriate angle in there. Okay, so I've got the floor set up, and now I need to set up the gradient. So what I'm going to do is reset the palette by clicking the little box here, press X on the keyboard, and I'll flick those over. So white is my foreground color. I'm going to click on my gradient button again, go to my gradient tabs at the top, and then these are all the different presets that we have. The first one is what we used earlier, was foreground to background. This one, the second one is foreground to transparent. That's the one we're after. So it goes from white to a transparent finish. So I'm going to press OK on that. And it does take a little bit of playing around with this. Notice I'm starting off away from the object and just so it lightly touches this side. So I'll press Ctrl Z so you can see the difference. If it's too harsh, it won't look as realistic as something that's nicely kind of yeah, displayed across it. Let me do it from this side actually. There we go. I think I'm going to stick with that. There you go. Okay. Okay. Next one is going to be the light shining through the ceiling. Okay, so I'm going to just trace around, making sure it's not perfect and it's got a slightly sketchy feel to it. There we go. Pressing enter to close that. Back to my gradient. Using Alt to zoom out. So just do it until you find something that looks right. Okay, I think I'm quite pleased with that one. This is light. Okay, so deselect that. Oh, click off the layer. Deselect. It's looking good. I'm going to add a little bit extra to this now. So taking care to go for the same angle, and I'm making that a little bit squarer there. Okay, so these are going to be my rays of light coming through. So again with the gradient tool, zooming out, and this just has to be very light. Let's zoom in and have a look at that. Deselect. It's looking quite good. Okay, so I'm happy with that. What you guys need to do, I'm not going to do this, but you can do this, is repeat this process. Actually, I'll do this and I'll pause it. Hello back. We're back. Just to say that I've just finished that off. Added some extra lights at the back. I think we'll call it a day at that. I think next we're going to have a look at the next section. We're going to have a look at importing some images and how to transform them and squash them around a bit. Okay, great stuff.